Unlike Season 1 of Infinity, Season 2 was a collaboration with my friend Finchy. In light of that, the format of this behind the scenes video is going to be a little bit different. Instead of me reading out a script, it's instead going to be a discussion between me and Finchy, almost like a podcast style format. This is because a lot of the pre-production of Season 2 took the form of these discussions, so having it replicated here gives you a slightly better idea of what it was actually like to make the thing than if I was just sitting in a room talking to myself. We first met like years ago.
Yeah, by now it's been years.
Yeah. So when we first met, we got to talking about characters,
Yeah,
and those discussions kind of turned into season 2 of Infinity after quite a long kind of development. So it was Hector and Iris that you had kind of come up with initially. And then we kind of made those like the two sort of main central characters, and then all of the other characters were kind of built on top of that, if I remember correctly.
Originally as well, the link between Hector and Iris is going to be a lot more I don't think extreme is the right term, but definitely a lot more on the nose. And it would have spanned pre-collapse, but considering the game has nothing that is pre-collapse, filming in the game something like that would have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it was. That sort of thing was cut for like practical reasons. But I do because the relationship between Hector and Iris was quite different in our initial discussions than what kind of turned into the final season. Because in the final season, like you get like you do get bits of it. Like they knew each other beforehand, with the amnesia thing, but originally that was going to be a much more sort of like central feature of the thing.
Yeah, of the bond. As, because the setup for them having known each other from the past would have been something a bit more consequential, in the sense that the original idea was for Hector to have the name Iris etched into his arm or carved into his exo arm, and that would sort of drive a search for a person with that name. Whereas with Iris, it was going to be a notebook that she had woken up, like when she became a guardian, she woke up next to it. And it would have had a myriad of entries, but one of them would have been one of them would have been about Hector, and that sets Iris's part of the ball rolling. And then it would have sort of gone from there. But when the game doesn't let you do certain design elements in certain areas, you're kind of fucked. So, alas, here we are.
Yeah, I know it's something because like it's an incredibly cool idea to have like names and stuff like that like actually carved in someone's arm, but there's no way you can kind of do it without employing CGI and stuff like that, which I don't like doing because I don't know how to do that.
Worse yet, you'd need somebody who's skilled in some form of animation software.
Yeah, which
is difficult depending on which software you want to use.
Yeah, that was kind of how Hector and Iris started, and then Foxtrot and Roderick were kind of something that I had in the back of my head for ages, but I never really got a chance to kind of like utilize those kind of ideas until like in season 2, because the whole idea is like obviously like they're twins and it's cool and like they're very similar, but I also can try to pay attention to like the differences between them and how that sort of thing would kind of play out, which kind of comes to the fore in season 4, because in season 2 they're very similar. Elliot, Brandy, and Kane, we kind of worked on together.
Yeah.
Elliot was kind of he was kind of designed to be this sort of like foil to kind of like Hector and Iris, because he was designed to be this sort of like stickler for the rules, presence of the vanguards type figure who was like obviously ostensibly good, but would kind of trip the team up by being like, no, we can't do this, we can't do that, for the purposes of dramatic tension.
And the kind of inevitable decision, well, I say inevitable, that might not be the right word, but the decision to then have him killed off in season 4 was in order to kind of, in a sense, I suppose, remove the rule restriction that the rules restrictions that he gave as a character, but also to allow some other characters to grow. As the thing with Elliot was that he didn't really grow, and I think that was kind of the idea. We didn't wanted a character that could be there and have dynamics, but I mean, for me, I think the fact that Elliot didn't develop, he wasn't prevalent, and his character growth was very minimal. It allowed other characters to shine. So he worked as a proper foil for a lot of the rest of the cast.
And also, part of the reason I was killed him off was just because I had too many characters and I needed to pick one. And Elliot was easy to kill because, as much as he didn't have that much of a character arc, he also, there weren't many places where he could go to. In the end, if that makes sense, he would just been another person. It was kind of his time to go. But yeah, in season 2, at least, he functions as the sort of the rules kind of restrictor. Brandy was a little bit different because that kind of started out as your idea, didn't it?
Brandy was essentially thought up of as a female character for a start. That was always the kind of intent, because I remember looking at the cast thinking there is one woman and like 6 dudes. Come on now. And so Brandy was designed to kind of be an opposite to Iris, in the sense that she was a bit more, maybe slightly more experienced, kind of knew what she was doing, but not brilliant, not perfect, but someone who on the surface level was a lot more confident. Confident and outgoing and loud on the outside, and on the inside is the Brandy that we ended up actually getting in the show. As I think her character probably went through the most revisions from her original vision to her final product.
Yeah. The original design was much, much more of a sort of like femme fatale type thing. It was much more kind of
heavy-handed, I would say.
Yeah, that would be like a good way to put it. It was much more overt. That went through a lot of revisions, and like eventually we kind of ended up with Brandy, who was a little bit more vulnerable. Might not be the right word, but somebody who didn't necessarily sort of have that sort of like outer confidence as much. But there were still elements of that we retained. Definitely the sort of like the femme fatale thing kind of morphed into more of a sort of traditional kind of romantic connection with Hector, which we kind of hinted at towards the end of season 2, but then that kind of grew into something actually proper in season 4.
Exactly. As originally, it was going to be a lot more of a... The best way that I can think to put it is the kind of back and forth that they would have been a lot more lighthearted and flirty initially, as I think the idea was that Brandy was genuinely interested, but Hector at first was just like, nah, piss off. I'm ancient. You don't want me. Like, if I wake up on the wrong side of bed, I will miss a couple of bolts. Like, that's just facts. So the back and forth would have been really jokey in the beginning, and then as the seasons progressed, as the show progressed, they would have been a bit more serious. And maybe around season 4, there would have been a proper sort of acknowledgement from the both of them saying, hey, we both know where this is going. So, we need to ask ourselves, are we going to go ahead with it? We're just going to stop.
Yeah, and that kind of worked out as it did in season 4. Kane was our main villain, and that also kind of did that also tie into the Hector and Iris thing? Because I struggle to remember it.
Kane originally, if I recall, did not. And the idea was that, well, there was this need of a villain, first of all. And Kane, originally I had no idea for what a villain should be. If there was one thing I think I remember saying is that I would have liked for him to have been nearly cartoonishly evil, just because that's also kind of fun to see. Have a character that just kind of just revels in the ridiculousness of some of the shit they say. So we started, I think that was the base, and then we toned it down a bit as we kept going, just in order to calm down the character. a bit, and then Kane eventually formed from that.
Yeah, give the character a bit more of a human edge.
Yeah.
Because the thing that I kind of wanted to do was that I didn't want to do another just like evil for the sake of evil villain, because that's what I'd done in season 1, and that's kind of what I was planning to do in season 4. What I kind of wanted to do was kind of make a more human villain, somebody who like had like, you know, intents and motives and purposes beyond just someone who just is evil. I think like some of the cartoonishly evil bits still kind of come through, especially, you know, considering the voice actor did a really good job of kind of conveying that almost of like petulant anger. But especially in like the last episode of season 2, it definitely comes through that Kane is a lot more human than a lot of the other villains. I think he's actually probably my favorite villain in Infinity, just because he's got that almost understandable edge to him. And then a couple of other characters, I think. The mercenaries, so like Bryce, Lucas, and Foster.
Those guys, I think the point of those guys was to round out the sort of villain side of the cast a bit more.
Yeah, to make sure it wasn't just Kane.
And kind of give the characters something to do, really.
Yeah, because I remember we had that conversation where I sent you a copy of the script and you were like, that like this is good, but like there's nobody for like, for example, for Hector to really fight, you know? There's no physical fighting challenge.
He's just kind of told, stay here, lol. And it's like, oh, the best fighter you have on the team, someone who's been doing the gig for longer than you all have been resurrected for, and you just tell him to stand still and do nothing.
Yeah.
Which is not good.
It's not ideal storytelling.
It's like you've got a brick. Like, think of it this way: you have a brick wall, and instead of using a wrecking ball to break it, you use a hammer and chisel because there's not a second brick wall for the wrecking ball to break. It just doesn't make sense. That's how these other sort of characters came about, just to round out a bit more. I also think it was nice because you got to get a lot more people in on the project to voice act. And I want to give my compliments to the voice actors for Elliot and Abel. They were probably my favorite out of a lot of the cast members. I liked their voices a lot, and they did a very good job.
A lot of the voice acting, I really, really like.
Speaking of the voice acting, I remember there was the voice actress for Iris, and initially, upon hearing it for the first time, I was a little bit concerned because Iris's voice was a little bit slurred. But then Jedi told me not too long ago that the voice actors at that time had just gotten braces in. Having had braces before, I could relate to that. So I'm just like, well, fair play.
The only other character I think left to kind of talk about is Riley, who in season 2 is kind of like this weird sort of like kind of almost add-on, because really he doesn't sort of start coming into it until season 4. But it's basically, first of all, to kind of give season 2 another subplot. And secondly, he's kind of instrumental in kind of breaking Iris out of the sort of like the machine prison that she's trapped in, which I found interesting because it's that thing of like he doesn't have any connection to the characters. He doesn't let Iris out because he goes, oh, I know her. He just does it because he can do it, and because, you know, if there's someone trapped there, let's like get them out. I like his characterization a lot. It's similar to the Outrider. It's that sort of sense of trying really hard to save something only to lose it.
Yep.
Which is quite a sort of like an almost sort of cruel plotline, but I think it kind of works. It's not like the main focus, but it is just another addition. It's another sort of strand of story that can get sort of like tied up neatly in season 4. The process of writing the script, I think once I went away and wrote it, there were a couple of drafts, but then once we kind of had our final draft nailed down, we got it cast pretty quickly, and then just as we were starting to get it cast, I started shooting it. The shoot was interesting. Yeah, the first episode, I would say, was kind of shot in the same manner of season 1, where I would sort of like like recruit body actors, and we would arrange times and get together a scene. That kind of worked okay. But then, considering like we'd started kind of production in about March, like late February, early March 2020, and then obviously what happened during March 2020 or April, I can't really remember, was the lockdowns, which turned into a bit of a problem later on, but actually at the start were okay because it meant that I had a lot of free time, and so I got myself a second Xbox, like really cheap, like secondhand, and I basically shot most of the rest of season 2 kind of by myself, controlling like 3 controllers at once.
I remember this, yeah.
It was something that I continued to do in later seasons, because after that, like I didn't do many other sessions with other people. It meant that I was really, really fast. I mean, like, first episode of season 2 came out in May, then the last episode came out like in August. Like, I would never be that fast ever again. And I was quite lucky that I was in a position to be able to do that. But it was a lot of long hours, because I would wake up at like 7 or 8 in the morning, and then I would film until like 1 in the afternoon, and then I would either like do other stuff to do with my life, or I would edit. And that meant that it was a lot of hours spent at the Xboxes, but also I got a lot of stuff done, and I was a lot faster than if I would have been with other people, partially because it's just easier for me to control controllers than ask people what to do, but also in the sense that it's not reasonable to expect people to stick around for like 7-hour body acting sessions. Like, that's not fair on anyone. But because I was willing to do that to myself, it meant that I was able to go really fast.
Yeah. So the characters were probably I would say that the characters were the thing that we spent the most amount of time on. The story itself was pretty basic. I don't think it took too much to get it to work and get it up and running.
Yeah, because the story was based around the characters anyways. What do you think of season 2, like, overall?
I would say that it is definitely an improvement over season 1. It was paced a lot more smoothly. It didn't feel too stop and start, whereas season 1 gave me that feeling. I think season 3 is where you kind of have the build up of all from what we've learned from season 1 and 2 into the story and the pacing of season 3.
Yeah.
And I would also say that the story of season 3 was a lot more interesting than season 2's. The characters as well were also fleshed out pretty good. So I would say that season 2 was in a way a proto season 3, and then season 3 knocked it. So
it's interesting that you say that, because I think season 2, in terms of like its story, is more similar to seasons 1 and seasons 4, because it's kind of structured like I've talked a little bit like this elsewhere, but Machinima is very enthralled to the conventions of the superhero genre. That's kind of where its lineage comes from, especially with Destiny. So with seasons 1 and 2 and 4, you had that kind of setup of you have a group of heroes, you have one villain with other side villains. Season 2, I think, is better than season 1 because the characters are a little bit more fleshed out. In particular, the villains, as you said, the pacing is a little bit better. It feels more like a journey and less like exposition, I guess.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think it was on a technical level a little bit better as well, because I spent a little bit more time on it. I'd obviously, going to learn a couple new techniques. I also edited it on Premiere Pro instead of Movie Maker for the first time, which also gave me a little bit more creative control, because the visual effects at the very start of the first episode, Hector's flashbacks, that was kind of your idea, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, I would say so.
Because I remember looking at that and going, I'm not going to be able to do that in Movie Maker, so I guess I should try and learn some new editing software, which has served me quite well.
Yeah.
In the end, I think it worked really well. It was a good exercise in developing our skills, particularly with regards to the voice acting and stuff, because I feel like doing that sort of thing where like having a closer relationship to the voice actors, and like I'm talking about you in particular because obviously like, you helped me, like you came up with some of the characters, and it was like it's your creative vision as well.
Yeah.
But that sort of thing of collaborating with other people and creatively, that was kind of new to me.
Yeah.
So that was good practice. And who knows, maybe maybe there'll be another collaboration between us in the future.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, we have a project that is in development.
And yeah, in development is a good way to put it. But that will be worked on pretty soon.
I would also say that the creative process is the whole designing and creating and brainstorming part has always been really rapid fire with us. We don't really tend to spend too much time coming up with the ideas and whatnot. The best way I could describe the process is I sit in my chair and I say what ideas come to mind, and then I get a 2-minute humming and humming and eyeing session from Jedi, and then I get a yes or no verdict, and that's it. That is the whole creative process.
Yeah, it tends to be quite quick because we just tend to end up bouncing ideas off each other, and it's just more a case of like editing it and making sure that it all kind of gets nailed down in the final thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all we have to discuss on season 2. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, take it easy.
See you guys next time.